Thank you, Frank and Gray, for joining me today. I'm really excited to chat with you about messaging. It's your favorite thing. I call Frank and Gray our wordies because they are good with words. So, Frank, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Wordie number one. Frank Rocchio. I'm the director of content here at Lone Fir Creative.
Awesome. And Gray?
Yep, I'm Wordy number two, Gray Gill, writing content from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Awesome. So we're here today to talk about messaging. Obviously, if your messaging sucks, your sales are going to suck too. But can you explain, we throw the word messaging around all the time at Lone Fir, but really what is brand messaging?
Yeah, you want me to start us off, Gray?
Yeah, go for it.
So brand messaging has a few different layers to it, I think. And how I like to view it is pretty multifunctional. So the first core element really is telling your customers or prospective customers the problem that you solve and how you do that uniquely. At its core, if your brand messaging isn't doing that, you're totally missing, and you're not going to see sales as a result. But if you do that primarily, that's a great start. But I also like to think that brand messaging has other functionalities to it. To quote one of my favorite books, The Brand Gap, there's 3 questions I always encourage people to make sure the brand messaging is answering, which is, who are you, what do you do, and why does it matter? If you're answering those 3 questions on a consistent basis, your brand messaging is in a good spot. But lastly, there's kind of a deeper level to it as well, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, but basically it has the opportunity to do a lot of other things outside of just answering those questions. But some of the non-tangibles, it forms your personality, it positions your business the way you want it to in the market. It can even transform your business into a brand by stating the point of view you have on things, by stating the way that you do things uniquely or the way that you uniquely solve a problem. So that's kind of how I would break it down.
That's awesome. Gray, what do you say brand messaging is?
Well, Frank said it really well with covering like the who, the what, and the why. I would just add that, it's sort of the emotional representation of your business, and as well as the functional. You want to be solving a problem, like Frank said, but you also want to reflect the values and sort of the personality of your customer base. You want to connect with your audience, and brand messaging is one of the, if not the most important ways to do that. Your customers want to see themselves in your brand, and so your brand should relate to them in a lot of ways. And you do that through messaging, through the tone and style of your communications, and kind of curating that experience.
I love that you said that, like the emotional side. I think that's one of the things that a lot of times brands miss, is because they're so eager to get, like, they're so great and this is what we need to get out there, but they forget, like, your customer needs to see themselves in your brand. I love that. They miss out on hitting that mark. And speaking of misses, Gray, what are some of the biggest branding misses or mishaps that you've ever seen?
The biggest one that comes to mind was a few years ago when Pepsi did the commercial with, I forget if it was Kendall Jenner or Kylie Jenner. I forget which Jenner, but the big commercial with her walking down the street, and it just tried to, it swung really big, and it tried to be like all things to all people. It tried to, say that a soda company was this huge unifying force in the world, and it just didn't really, when you try to be all things to all people, you usually are going to miss and fall flat. And that's what that ad did to me. It just, it tried to stuff too much into a commercial, and instead of connecting with their audience in more effective ways. But I think there's also, just like on a smaller scale, just like any time, I don't have a specific example for this, but any time that communication just sounds stiff, or uses a lot of jargon, or just tries to, if every time I open an email and I just can tell this was written by a committee of 20 people who all tried to squeeze their, their nugget of truth in there, and then they end up saying nothing. I think any time you see that, it's like clearly a messaging miss for me.
Email by committee. And like, how many times this year have we seen during these unprecedented times? It's like, we got to come up with a better way to say it, people. Like, be creative.
Yeah.
What about you, Frank?
I would agree with what Grace said. I think that's a huge problem, but to try and hit maybe from a different perspective, maybe some of the threads I see consistently and maybe less severe, but definitely harmful to brand messaging over the last year is over promising. I think that's that can be just as dangerous as not being clear. People are smart. They read through. If you're trying to promise them the world, people know that that's not the case. So being really clear about legitimate ways that you can help and being really transparent in that is really helpful. Don't go telling people you can make them $1 million when that's not true. And even if you can, you need to back that up so it's authentic. The second thing is, I'd say sometimes there's too much focus on being sexy and not clear. It's always great to have really creative and fun language, but if you're not being clear about what you do, it doesn't matter how awesome your copywriting is or how awesome your brand messaging is. It's going to be a miss. And then one more thing I would say is talking about too much too soon. If right off the bat, everything is a priority for your brand, every product, every service, every aspect of your business, then nothing is going to get across to your customer. People cannot handle overload or information overload that quick. So I'd say being really focused and giving people little pieces at a time as seen necessary.
It actually kind of reminds me of an interview process. So it's really like when someone goes to your website or they interact with your brand, like it is almost like they're interviewing you to see if they're going to give you their money. But like if you like in an interview, if you overload somebody and like you just talk nonstop about yourself and you're not concise and a good communicator, you're not going to get the job. And if brands like suck at communicating, they're not going to get the job either. And for sure.
Yeah.
Frank, when it's well done, what can good messaging do for a brand?
That question has endless answers. And I'm not saying that because I'm a copywriter or former copywriter or whatever, but it really is the truth. Language is how we communicate. And if communication is done well, I mean, you can, at the end of the day, you can change the world, but in a much more real sense and not over promising. Basically, I mean, you can define your niche market. You can either, nicely wiggle your way into a nice niche in the market, or you can create a brand new one, depending on how you position your product or service, that is. You can shift people's perception of the value of your service, something that's maybe not traditionally seen as important or valuable. The way that you communicate and talk about that, you can definitely shift that. And then also, if wielded well in certain contexts, you can even communicate ideas subconsciously. If you're using really crazy and edgy language, you're definitely going to create a personality through that. If you're using really serious direct language, you create connotations off of that as well. So it really is endless. But with all that said, the beauty of brand messaging is that you can leverage it to practically do whatever you want. And if done well, it really can drive revenue for your business if you let it.
That's awesome. Great. What do you think?
Yeah, I think brand messaging can convince us to buy $100 pairs of leggings or to, what's that?
As it has, Gray.
Yeah. And what I mean is that, branding convinces us to make decisions. We're all going to need stuff eventually. And we seek out the brands that resonate with us. And I say this like as a consumer, not as a copywriter. Like I know that there's very little difference between different products in the same space, but there's something about the message that one brand puts out that I latch onto more so than another one. I mean, let's use like carbonated water that's like exploded on the scene in the past few years. Like they're all pretty much the same thing. They have, carbonated water in fun colored cans with, some essence of fruit or something in there. They all taste pretty much the same if you did a blind taste test, but for some reason, some of us love LaCroix, some of us like bubbly, some of us like, fill in the blank, but it all contributes, or it all stems from how that brand is positioning themselves, what type of messaging they're putting out there. And yeah, I think the most memorable brands, the most long lasting ones are the ones that have a consistent message, across their packaging copy, across their social media, across their website. They're kind of all building from the same core message that feels familiar and relatable to their customers.
I love that. That's super true. And yeah, I mean, I know that I pay more for certain things and they're probably the exact same, I'm the cheaper one, but I want this one. For sure. I'm certainly a sucker for that. Well, when we, draft our brand messaging and our strategery, as I like to call it, we follow the story brand framework, which is a really powerful tool that we use. And, we talk about story brand a lot, and a lot of times people come to us already familiar with it. But Frank, can you explain why story brand messaging is so powerful and why it's the framework that we use?
Yeah, story brand is revolutionary, and it may underdefine what revolutionary means in the context of the term, but as it pertains to brand messaging, it really is, because instead of, or at least the way I look at it, instead of yelling to people basically, hey, look over here, we're important, we're cool, we're awesome. It basically just, it subtly inserts a company into a story that's already being told or already unfolding in a customer's life. And you're basically kind of introducing yourself as someone who can help. Just as kind of a framework for those who maybe don't know, what the story brand framework does is it takes the model of brand messaging and makes it all about the customer, right? It focuses on the customer's needs, on their wants, on the problems that they face, on everything that they desire or the goals they wish to accomplish. And basically, you present your brand or your service as someone who empathizes with them, someone who understands the problem that they're going through. And when it comes time to present your product or solution, it's not from a perspective of, hey, we're the best, we're great, we're awesome. It's the perspective of, we understand your problem, we understand everything you're going through, we understand what you want. So, hey, here's a solution to that. We guide them towards kind of becoming not to use cliche language, but basically the hero of their own mission, right? We guide them forward to the thing that they want, really just as a resource to help them get there, not as the primary player in their story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And great. I know you have created so many beautiful brand scripts. Like, tell me how it feels when you get to help a brand like clean up their messaging and like actually tell that story.
Yeah, I think the greatest value that our clients see out of going through story brand workshops with us and kind of applying this strategy and these principles to their marketing and their messaging is, like Frank said at the beginning of our conversation, a lot of times brands try and cram everything they do, every product they have, every little thing they try and fit into their messaging. And what happens is that it's just overwhelming for a customer. They say a lot without saying anything at all. And so with story brand, we're able to really help them focus on the most valuable things that they offer, the most important customer that they can help, and the easy wins and the most memorable messaging that they can use. And so, yeah, I love going through that process with clients and just kind of seeing it click for them and them seeing the value in clarifying that message and having that kind of aha moment. That's just awesome.
I love it too, especially because so many of the people that we work with are like, they love the company that they're a part of or the business that they themselves have built. And then when they like see a completed, brand messaging filter, they just like, their eyes light up. They're like, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, I didn't even know how to say it, and you said it so well. But
yeah. The last
guys,
thing,
oh yeah,
I was going to add one more thing and just basically say the beauty of the story brand framework is its uber simplicity.
oh yeah,
like communicating to customers, like, what do I say? What do I use? What framework to talking about my product do I actually use? And to their, again, all of their credit at the story brand team, they've come up with a way, basically a ancient way of telling stories and communicating and boiling it down to the simple things that your customer needs to know that's effective. So they've definitely done a great job at that.
Absolutely. We're spoiled to get to work with them. Well, you two, thank you so much for meeting today. I have loved talking with you. I love that I get to work with you both, but I also am excited to be able to do this with you. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thanks, Amanda.